you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Today's chat's been brought to you by International Horse College. International Horse College's motto is people safety and horse welfare, and you'll find this message throughout our chats. Registered Training Organisation number 31352. Today I'd like to introduce Dr. Robert Miller. Dr. Robert Miller started off as a veterinarian. He's now retired from that. We're going to talk to him about the science of horsemanship and the principles of equine behaviour, and also a little bit about his book, Blending Art and Horsemanship. How are you today, Bob?
Oh, fine.
Good. Now, we started to talk a little bit about your favourite quote. You started to tell me, and I said, no, hang on a sec. We'll start the interview, and then you can tell me about your quote. Now, your quote, I understand, is from the Bible, but not necessarily for religious reasons. Would you like to talk about your quote and why you've chosen that one?
I heard this often as a child. My parents said it, especially my mother, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think that if everybody lived by that, we would be so much kinder, such a more peaceful world, so much less friction and hostility. And the important thing to me is it doesn't mention that others means humans, because I think that applies to animals as well. Okay. Do unto others as you would have the others do unto you.
Good. Now, you've been fairly strong in the teaching of the science of horsemanship, principles of equine behaviour.
Yes.
Yeah. What got you into that field? Is it going back to your mother saying, do unto others as you would have them do unto you?
No. I had a great interest in horses as a child, possibly because my father grew up on a farm working with draft horses and had a great love for horses and told me about that. And I saw pictures of him. I still have them with the horses that were taken early in the 20th century. And when World War II broke out, there was an organization called Victory Farm Volunteers, because there was a great shortage of manpower on the farms because everybody was rushing to get into the war effort and to enlist in the armed forces. So I applied for that at 15 years of age. I was accepted and included a salary of $1 per day, room and board.
Yep.
And the only choice they gave you is not the kind of farm that you were going on, but the location. Now, I chose Vermont. I was interested in history and wanted to see rural New England. So I got on a train. They shipped me all the way to Vermont. Spent my summer there working for $1 a day, sometimes as long as 12 hours a day. Loved it. And next summer said I want to go back to Vermont. And this time they sent me to a modern dairy farm, which I was hoping the first time. But when I got there, I found there was no electricity. And we had to hand milk 15 head of cattle. But the second summer was a modern farm. And I didn't like it as well as that previous farm. But I worked with horses, worked the fields behind a horse. And the high point of the day, when the day was over, working in the fields behind a horse all day, cultivating mostly, was to get on that horse's back and ride him in bareback. And except for the 2 years I was in the Army, I spent every summer of my life working with horses. And when I became a veterinarian, it became every year of my life.
Yep.
It still is.
Yep. Yep. And just being a vet and understanding horsemanship and equine behaviour, do you think that the people who have horses understand that as well? Is that why you started to teach that, is because there was a lack of understanding?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was there an incident that you thought, I'm going to start teaching this?
No, not teaching, but using better methods.
Yep.
After I got out of the Army, before I started college, the first summer I worked wrangling horses in California on a very large ranch, the Irvine Ranch. And then started college in the fall. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it, but I was majoring in animal husbandry in the School of Agriculture only because I loved animals. I didn't know what I was going to do with the degree. And the next summer, I worked on a ranch way in the southern Arizona, down near the Mexican border. And they had guys starting colts there. They call them bronc busters back in those days.
Yep.
And it was very crude and very brutal. Blindfold the horse, tie up one leg, get him saddled. Very forceful, very terrifying for the horse. And then you buck him out until he quit and would accept the fight. And I somehow knew that there had to be a better method, even though this is traditional cowboy horsemanship.
Yep.
So when I got back to town in the fall, went back to school, I went to the library, and I found two books written in the 19th century, one by John Rarey from Ohio, and one written in England by Captain Horace Hayes, a cavalry veterinarian who spent his career in India.
Yes.
These were eye-opening experiences for me that starting colts and horsemanship does not need to be brutal or forceful or abusive. It just has to be skillful. And I continued going to school, got my bachelor's degree, and still could not get into veterinary school. I moved to Colorado because I wanted to live in Colorado at that time. I loved to ski. I loved the mountains. Spent summer working on a ranch, and then finally was accepted into the Colorado Veterinary School. And every summer I worked on ranches, and I was starting colts. Colts back then were 4, 5, and 6 years of age and had never been handled. And I developed a method today we now call natural horsemanship.
Yes.
And when I became a veterinarian, when I graduated in 1956, my practice was very, very mixed practice here in California, which is what I wanted. Mostly beef cattle, horses, dogs and cats, and the area had a tremendous wild animal population, a big zoo, and it never had a veterinarian closer than 30 miles away. So I did all species, everything, and built a group of 6 doctors. Halfway through my career, one of them suggested that one of us ought to specialize in horses because horse practice was growing in quantity and quality. And they all looked at me. And I said, wait a minute, I started this practice and I love the variety of animals in it. And one of my partners said, yes, but you're the only horseman in the group, so you're the logical one. I agreed to do it for 1 year. And if I was not happy, I'd go back into mixed practice, all species, and we'd take on another veterinarian as a full-time equine practitioner. Well, within 30 days, my life had become so simplified trying to keep up with the technology, which, like all technologies, was growing explosively. I only had to concentrate on horses. And more important to me, I love working out of doors. I don't like working indoors. And in California, working out of doors is very pleasant 95% of the time. We have a very benign climate.
Mm-hmm.
So I told them I'd be very content to spend the rest of my career this way. I developed some techniques which were revolutionary training techniques, and I'm a writer, so I was writing monthly for the Western Horseman magazine, and I was soon getting invitations internationally to teach horse behavior. Then, at 58 years of age, I realized I was turning down all kinds of wonderful invitations, and made the decision to retire from practice at age 60 and teach and write full time. And now, at 91, that's what I'm doing.
Wow.
Writing.
Wow. I'm just wondering, when you had all those other species of wild animals, when you're working with them, did that help you understand the horse behaviour a bit better? The wild horse behaviour? So you're working with other wild animals and working with wild horses. Was it similar in behaviour?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, everything adds to your education. But since I was working with species, mammals, reptiles, birds, that I had never been trained in, I had to rely upon what I knew about them. And this led me to become a worshiper of evolution. I would analyze, where does this creature live in the wild? How does it survive? And that gave me clues to how to handle them, how to get along with them, to understand their behavior, how to feed them. I started to apply this to domestic animals, particularly the horse. And it took a long time, but it led to invitations. We've been on every continent except Antarctica. There are not too many horses down there. But we've been in many countries and have friends all over the world now. And I'm also as avid a student as I am a teacher. So I regularly attend the various horsemen, trainers, clinicians, and attend their performances, read books, magazines constantly. And I learn what not to do, and I learned what to do.
Okay.
And my own horses and mules are an example of the efficacy of the proper methods.
If you were going to give a message to our listeners, about the main principles of equine behaviour, what would you say to them? Thinking that the listeners to our podcast are people who just would like to know more about horses, more about education of horses, more about, everything. I mean, we have lots of specialists on, but the main principles of equine behaviour, what would you say they are?
Having been all over the world in native horsemanship, South America, all over North America, Europe, Asia, I can say one thing. The horse is a very forgiving creature. This enabled it to become the most valuable of all domestic animals to the human species because it enabled man to travel distances with speed that was otherwise not attainable, and learn from other people various things that served to advance. Those civilizations that didn't have a horse were greatly retarded in their development. Those civilizations that had the horse, that's primarily Europe and Asia, made great advances because the horse gave them the mobility. And as a lover of mules, which unlike the horse is a very forgiving creature. Mules, very talented animals, but much less forgiving than the horse. And in order to be an expert with mules, you have to use proper equine behavior. Whereas with horses, a lot of the methods that are traditional in many societies are unnecessarily crude, unnecessarily abusive. But the horse, being a forgiving creature, the majority of horses manage to become useful domestic animals. And the rare horse that doesn't, we blame it on the horse. We say that's an outlaw, and we sell them to a rodeo contractor. But it's because the methods used. If you are to get mules that are gentle and safe and considerate, like the ones we own, you've got to use ideal horsemanship. What is in the last half century become known as natural horsemanship, the term coined by Pat Pirelli, who took it to Australia and elsewhere in the world. And one of the horsemen that I admire the most.
What's a method, just thinking about the training methods that mules won't accept that horses will, a crude method that you think needs to be phased out that horses are better off without? You've said about the blindfolding and the tying the horse's legs up.
Yes. The traditional cowboy method was to tie up a hind leg, blindfold the horse, restrain him by the ears or with a twitch, or get him saddled up, get up in the saddle, turn him loose, and let him buck until he quit bucking. And the next time it was a little easier, and the next time a little easier. Some of those horses would buck all of their lives, but it was considered normal. And they managed to make very, very good, skillful ranch horses for herding cattle, for roping cattle, and so on, which convinced them that what we're doing is correct. But when I saw that on the ranches, I just felt it wasn't necessary. And if you use the methods known as natural horsemanship, and even though you're in Australia, because of Pirelli, first of all, he's married to an Australian lady, a horsewoman, and secondly, because he's been there many, many times, once with me. I think that the term is familiar. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Those men. In fact, Pirelli actually started his career with mules, not with horses. And he had a saying when he was in his mid-20s, when I met him.
Yep.
Mules are exactly the same as horses, only more so. And so using the methods he teaches and that I picked up on many years earlier, it's changed horsemanship all over the world. It's not a complete thing, but it is changing. And I decided in my late 50s that I'm going to retire from veterinary practice prematurely, which I did at age 60, and join this revolution in horsemanship. Not to be one of the clinicians teaching it, but rather to explain scientifically, because I had the background and the education, why it works.
Okay. Yep.
Take the mystique out of it, the mystery.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. All right, now talking about your book, the one that you wrote about blending art and horsemanship. Now, I haven't read the book, but I've heard that within the book you talk about people who start off with horses, might ride when they're young, have horses, but their career gets in the way. they go on, they give up horses, get to, almost like a midlife crisis, and then say, oh, I think I want to go back to horses. Now, we hear those stories all the time. People, even when they're young, they say, I've got to go to university. They might go to university and drop out or not, or have a year off before they go to university, never actually stop doing horses. But people who go and have a career and give up and have a life with horses, we've talked about that. But I think your farrier, do you want to tell us a little bit about him and the career he gave up?
Yes, he was an astrophysicist working for the U.S. Navy and working at the Point Mugu Naval Base, which is about 3 miles from where I live. And he had horses, and I took care of his horses. And then I got a letter from him. He called me out one time and said, I shoe my own horses. I'd like your professional opinion. And I looked at it, and I remember what I said to him. I said, you're not only doing an excellent job with the care of your horse's feet, but you're actually doing better than some professional farriers. Of course, he was glad to hear that. And a few years after that, I got a letter that he had sent out that he was going to quit his position with the Navy and become a full-time farrier. He's now in his 70s and still shoeing horses full-time. When he was just, I think, 70, I said to him, do you ever regret your change of careers? He said, no. He says, I'm a very happy man now. This is what I love. But what you said, people that have maybe learned to ride when they're young and then raising families and their careers and the cost of owning horses stops them from it. And then much later on, when they have both the time and the money to go back to it, that's very, very common.
Yes.
I've seen that countless times.
Yes, there's that reward that you can't compare with money. It's not a monetary thing. It's
Let me ask a question. You mentioned I've done 23 books. You mentioned the book. What was the title of the book?
The one that I had heard that came up was Blending Art and Horsemanship.
Oh, yeah, but that is the one book that has nothing to do with horsemanship. It's just I discovered with this farrier, incidentally.
Yes.
This farrier is an artist. And I said to him, this not too many years ago, before that I did that book, I said, it's amazing how many people that love horses and have horsemanship skill are also artistic. I said, including me. He says, that's right, you're a professional cartoonist. I said, yes, I am. I said, but I'm talking about the fine arts. I can think of so many people. He said, why don't you write a book about that? So I went home. I started calling some of my friends, clients, associates, and some of them that I didn't know had artistic ability. And I'd say, I've always admired your horsemanship. I said, I've never asked you this before, but do you have artistic ability? And I was amazed. With very few exceptions, they said, yes, I like to sculpt. Another one likes to do metal work. A lot of music was number one.
Okay.
The love of music. So there is a link between this love of horses and horsemanship and artistic ability. And I decided nobody knows about this. I ought to mention it. So that's why I wrote the book.
It's interesting. I want, for our listeners to think about what do they do. I'm thinking myself, when I was at school, I took art as a subject and ended up having one of my paintings hung in the Queensland Art Gallery, which, I'm sure that there's many professional artists that would like to have that honour. And
your lifelong love of horses.
Yep, for sure.
Yes, there is a connection. I don't know if it's mental or physical. I haven't tried to understand it, but it's having researched it by speaking to countless people that I thought had a strong love for horses. I found that majority. In fact, a lot of them said, "Oh no, I don't have any artistic ability," and I said, "None." No. I wish I could. And then a few minutes later, they'll say, I ask if they have hobbies. Oh, yes, music. I'm a music lover.
Yes.
In other words, they didn't regard that as an art form. I had many answers like that, that they didn't regard themselves as an artist, and yet their passion, their hobby was artistic. So there's a link there, no question about it.
Yep, for sure. All right, now going forward, because you've just had Thanksgiving, you're in the middle of Thanksgiving, is that right?
Tomorrow is Thanksgiving.
Okay.
The family's gathered in the other room.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, we'll let you get back to them very soon. But just wondering, what are you writing another book? Are you doing anything at the moment?
Well, I write continuously, magazine articles. I'm always working on a book. I did this throughout my career. Sometimes I would take as long as 9 years to get through a book, so I'm still on the lecture circuit. I've cut myself this year, 2018. I cut myself to one trip a year.
Okay.
Because these things usually run several days, like a weekend seminar at an expo or something like that. And last year I was doing 2 or 3 a month, and we're just getting to an age where we thought we'd slow down a little bit, so now I'm only doing 1 a month.
Okay. All right, and then just if you can sum up your philosophy with horses, with training, with equine behaviour, how would you sum it all up just into a couple of sentences?
Boy, that's difficult. That's difficult.
It's a big subject, yes.
We have to discard tradition, because wherever I've gone in the world, including many places very famous for their horsemanship, Poland, Argentina, just the Western North America, and many other places, I have found that I've seen things that I'd never seen before and admired, and the same group of horsemen did things that horrified me. They were so unnecessarily coarse and brutal. So what I tell people is there's so much information out there now, videos and books and the horse magazines. You have to educate yourself. And that's what I did. I worked at it. So also, there's opportunities everywhere now to attend educational clinics. And we should not become a blind disciple, because with rare exceptions, even many of these very famous clinicians, horse trainers, whose methods I strongly commend, are doing things that I think are wrong, but most of what they're doing is correct. You didn't ask me one question, is how did I get on this teaching and lecture circuit that cut my practice career?
Yes, please tell us. Yeah.
I developed a method of training newborn foals.
Okay.
Which had tremendous opposition, because I was taught in agricultural school before I went to veterinary school to minimize the handling of newborn foals. That you'll cause problems. You'll interfere with the bond between mare and foal. You'll spoil the foal. I was taught the same thing in veterinary school. When I got into practice in 1959, my third year practice, I had a very busy obstetrical week in May of 1959. I had to get out of bed 3 nights to deliver foals, distortions. That is where the foals were tangled and couldn't be born. They were coming out the wrong way, which meant if without human interference, both mare and foal would die. So it's kind of a hard work to do in the middle of the night to push that foal back in, get it turned around properly, and then pull it out, deliver it. And then you don't jump in your car and drive home because the foal and the mare have been through a lot of stress. So you stick around a half an hour or so, be sure they're all right, and dry the foal off and listen to its heart and spend a little time with it. And when I went back to see those foals, one at 40 days, I was doing a pregnancy exam on the mare.
Yep.
Even bred on the foal heat. One 100 days, also a pregnancy exam on the mare. And the other one was 4 months of age, at which back then we would worm and vaccinate foals at 4 months. Mm-hmm. I was amazed that these foals were so gentle. They, first of all, 2 of them actually came to me. They recognized me and came to me. And but all 3 of them allowed me to handle them and touch them. And in each case, I turned to the owner and said, "Boy, what a gentle foal." I said, "You've been working with it?" They said, "No, we haven't touched it since you delivered it."
Wow.
So I knew about imprinting that had been discovered by an Austrian scientist in the 30s, 1935, Konrad Lorenz. And he wrote about geese, that goslings handled as they come out of the egg by a human, they will attach to the human, respect the human, and follow anywhere. He called it imprinting. That's the translation. Mm-hmm. It's Prägung in German. And I thought, but it works in birds. Why wouldn't it work in mammals? Well, as a matter of fact, it had already been established while I was in college. That had been established that mammals imprint at certain ones at birth, what they call precocial species. The imprinting occurs at birth. Sheep and goats, 15 minutes after birth. That's the area of time that you have. So I had a foal coming at home, and when born, I spent time with it, handled it all over, and the next day I knew I was onto something. Mm-hmm. So we were raising a foal a year. After doing 3 foals, I decided to bring it into my practice. And when I was called out to see a newborn foal, I would say to the owner, "Would you like to see what I'm doing with my foals?" They say yes, and I'd show them. It'd take about an hour. I didn't charge them for it because I knew that foal was going to be a good patient for the rest of its life. Mm. And then I found it was taking so much time that after a couple of years, I started saying, "What are you going to do with this foal?" And if they said, "We've already got it sold," or "We're going to sell it," I didn't take the time. But if they said, "Well, we're keeping it, it's going to be part of our breeding herd," I knew if I spent an hour, even if I didn't charge for it, I'd benefit by it because yes. I created a gentle and cooperative patient, as all of my horses and mules have been. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got into this. Then I started writing articles. I was doing monthly articles for the Western magazine. Then they asked me to do a book, which I did eagerly. And that book is still published and still available, Infant Training of the Newborn Foal. And then I made some videos of the procedure, and I started getting invitations from all over this country and other countries. And that led to my early retirement from practice into the career I'm still in right now. Yeah. And that is traveling, teaching, writing, and enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you are. And I'm looking forward actually to talking to you a bit more, talking to you in a bit more depth. You know, we can sort of talk about what we can do next time. I think at the moment, probably your family are waiting for you in the next room to get back to your Thanksgiving activities. But if people wanted to contact you and talk to you about anything, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, my website is www.robertmmiller.com. That's where my books and videos are ordered from. My son runs that part of it. I write them, he sells them. And I'll only mention, as I said, I've done about 8 videos and working on my 23rd book.
Yep.
But your listeners, they want to know which I recommend.
Yes, please.
The book I recommend is Understanding the Ancient Secrets of the Horse's Mind, because that goes over everything I've said here, but it goes into detail. I've got a video on it, but I recommend the book.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing I recommend is just the opposite. I recommend the video rather than the book because I feel it's so important. And I'm sadly going to mention the fact that it's the poorest selling video I've done, even though I think it's the most important. It's called Safer Horsemanship.
Okay.
Because I mentioned to the people who did my training videos that only once in my life was I ever injured by a horse to where I had to go into a hospital. And that was when a 3-week-old foal ran into me at top speed, knocked me flat on my back, and I ended up with knee surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unusual for anybody working with horses. There's usually lots of injuries. So they said, why don't you make a video on the methods you use to avoid getting injured?
Yes.
So I had to think it out, and I came out with this video, Safer Horsemanship, safer for the horse and safer for the human.
Yep.
But it doesn't appeal to people as much as horse training does. But I tell people that I love horses. They're wonderful animals, but because of their size and strength and the fact that they're a timid prey species, capable of extremely fast motion, you've got to know where to stand, how to move, facial expression, the position of your hands. Horse reads all of that. So I do a lot of presentations at expos, and I've had 3, all people in their 60s, 3 people come up to me and say, your Safer Horsemanship video saved my life. And I said,
oh, wow.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think if people can go to your website, and we'll have those details on your page as well, which will be horsechats.com/Robert Miller. We'll have all of those details on there about the videos, or the video, the book, and how you can get to the website to have a look at all the videos and all the books to go from there.
Does my wife have that number?
I will send it to her. Yes.
Yes, please do. Just like my son sells the books and videos, my wife does all the computer work.
No worries at all. All right. Look,
family operation.
Yeah. We'd love to have you back. I think you've got 10 behavioural characteristics of horses, of a horse.
That is what the book I recommended, Understanding the Ancient Secrets of a Horse's Mind.
Okay, yes.
It deals with
it's
10
in there.
qualities essential for the human to understand.
Yep. All right. Well, look, I think we're going to talk to you next week, aren't we? We can talk about that then, the 10 behavioural characteristics of the horse, or 10 that they can understand. Yep, perfect. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking to you, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe.
If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.